Hello viewers, my name is Adam.
And I'm Aaron.
This is Sigourney Productions.
Hey you!
And in this video, we're doing a movie review.
So, we got around and we got to see some Avatar. Was it Fire and Ash, the third movie in the franchise, and where this little guy has been, you know, So now that I got to, put him down for sleep, we can really finally get into this movie review.
Yes, Avatar: Fire and Ash is, like we said, the third film in the James Cameron Avatar series for 20th Century Studios. Yes,
yeah.
Under the second film under Disney's ownership, and
this movie really only had a few hurdles, at least for I'm concerned, in order for it to actually justify its existence, and that was mainly it had to play, or at least add more to the story than what the last two installments did, because Way of Water was pretty much the first Avatar just with water and some other elements.
Mind you, even with in some cases you can argue it probably still doesn't do enough for what this film had going for it.
Yeah,
I would say for the most part this movie is mismarketed.
Oh yeah,
to the point that when James Cameron, prior to this film release, it says that this one concludes the first saga,
the Sully saga, specifically basically off of what's it supposed to be, Jake and Neytiri's story, and this is where it's supposed to really conclude at. And I guess in certain ways it does, but for the vast majority of this film, it pretty much serves as if it was the part two to Way of Water.
Mm-hmm. And like back in 2009, we didn't have our review because the channel was to start when that movie came out.
It's true.
But we do have our review for Way of Water, where we say because of how slim the story was told.
It was bare bones, y'all.
We did give it an okay, and we still stand by it.
Oh yeah.
So we debated whether or not we was gonna watch this movie or not.
I swear we really did.
But the reason why we got it is because there were some elements that he was teasing in a marketing ploy that caught some interest, and no matter what, I feel as though Avatar, from what James Cameron and his team was able to produce, they are still, for each installment is another evolution step forward with filmmaking technology. So as film cinephiles and aspiring filmmakers ourselves, it's almost feel like we're compelled to watch. At least see what.
Anytime when you have somebody who's supposed to be trying to be the next step in the generation of movie magic out there, we're going to have to at least turn an eye to it and see where it falls. As far as the story, there are some interesting twists all these interesting turns that develops among it.
Those are the event starts off like a few months after the events of Way of Water.
Yeah.
Where when we were introduced to Sully's family, when we had with Neytiri, and the fact that they're still, when we found them, they traveled into more of the water clans and on those planet Pandora.
Basically, they're on the run from the military, the human military that's after Jake and Neytiri for their events that had happened in the prior film, and in their attempt to try and flee them, they assimilated themselves within the water tribe to give a better life to their family. If you saw that movie, you saw how that one ended up. So yeah, this is basically a few months after those events, the death of the eldest child, the dealing with the hunting of the whales, the space whales they got, and of course them having their triumphant victory over the humans from killing them off, those whales, and disrupting the harmony was within that water tribe. And
then with Fire and Ash, it still continues a lot of the storylines.
It really does.
But it gives more insight into other different factions, the Navi that we are introduced to, more insight into Awa.
Oh yeah, don't they go? They actually do quite a bit with that particular character, who was always felt kind of like how they usually like to do with a lot of ethereal presences in fiction or in science fiction. AY in this particular case takes on more of the role that we actually associate with something like the Force in certain ways.
Yeah, and we also more development on the human side. That I feel is a little bit more into getting more of the interesting aspects into how humans are dealing with that's even more so on the planet of Pandora.
Yes, in this particular situation, the major focus or the real reason that the humans are coming to this moon of Pandora isn't just for them to mine and take resources, but this is also their attempt to try and terraform it.
Basically colonize.
Very much.
The whole series is a big allegory to colonization on this one on such a massive scale, because you're marrying this. You're trying to address these very universal themes and pack it in a science fiction genre that I feel though that there are still areas where they probably should have dealt even more harder on and more effectively than whatnot, because I feel as though there are when I say that they also highlight more of an area in the human's perspective, I feel that there should be a lot more different human characters than what is presented here, because now because there are a lot more the colonization, despite the fact that no matter who he was how the story so far has been portraying it's more black and white than it really is.
Yeah, it paints the humans that are coming to Pandora as being these mustache twirling evil guys who's just doing this stuff just because they can, where they really should be focusing on the major aspects of what human beings have lost from their own home world, i.e. Earth, and what those constraints of life and living does on a population that has a completely drained world, and having to force themselves to go across the cosmos to an alien world in order to find some semblance of survival.
Going 3 movies in now, even though we've been introduced to like at least about 4 different main regional Navi tribes and how they live,
you really only get a sense of Navi culture really by how these particular tribes interact with the wildlife. You don't really get a full grasp or sense of the actual intricacies of their social constructs. And then when it comes to the I guess also maybe they're in touch with the religious aspects of AWA, but you don't know any kind of holidays. You don't know how they actually truly worship that that deity, stuff like that.
Yeah, we see them like praying, but James Cameron, I guess, the key to a James Cameron film, the why he's successful in the first place is to be as general as possible. But the strength is not just the general and simplicity that he tends to have with his storytelling, but it is an intense sincerity that I find that it gives a lot. It prevents the storytelling to be it prevents it from being too cynical, and which is a great departure from what most modern story movies have been lately.
This is true,
but and it gives more weight to the focusing more on emotions.
And with those emotions is really guided by the actual characters and their developments throughout the story in this movie.
The narrator of this Fire and Ash is the middle child, Lawak.
With his storyline, it is endearing in certain ways. He is the individual who has to prove himself to not only himself but also his father figure, who happens to be this larger than life freedom fighter who is now reluctant to return to the fight due to his responsibilities of being a father.
Like The Rock is experiencing major survival's guilt.
Yeah.
Because of he feels guilty. That is the reason why his older brother
Nathaniel ended up getting killed in the first film. I mean, in the second film. When it comes to that concept, you do sympathize with him, especially with the way that his father Jake is treating him during this mourning period aspect of it. And of course his connections towards another character, one of the whales, Payakan, with the way that he was able to embrace that character. Those two characters end up being two sides of the same coin.
I feel as though that's one of my favorite developing relationships in the series. This sense of outsider, those two being outsiders amongst the clans who have to think outside the box to help with the situation on such a massive scale.
Yeah.
And it's sad that he has to have this very strained relationship with his parents, of Sully and Neytiri, because I feel as though a lot of the tension is dealt with the fact that how much Sully and Neytiri put so much pressure on their first child. They clearly had a favorite.
Yeah.
And you see just how much damaging that has happened with the family. They don't even really interact that much with their own youngest child. Yeah,
this little girl has been shortchanged in both films, in my opinion. You really don't have much to do aside from her either A, being captured, or being just told to wait out until people come and get her.
It's frustrating, and you're just throwing all the responsibility to your children. You're the parents here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just speaking about those parents, this is actually going into them.
Still Sully, being portrayed by Sam Worthington, who I feel as though this is the only main role that he's able to can get work in at this point.
That's true. Because to be honest with you, aside from these Avatar films, I don't really. And maybe the Titan films,
they were Hollywood trying to he was one of the ingenues back in the early 2010s.
They kept putting him everything, trying to see if he could actually work. But I really, thank God he has Avatar, because this is something he was actually able to do. Am I able to gravitate with Jake Sully? Yes. In certain ways, I feel for him, because he is a father who is dealing with a great loss of one of his children and having to deal with the responsibilities of not only just being a father, but also a fighter against his own people. Because we gotta remember, this is a man who is living in both worlds.
Well, not really.
I mean, he pretty much he gave up on it, but he still has these ties towards his humanity, especially with another character in this movie.
I feel as though this is the move where he gets the more depth in his character.
Yeah.
Because matter of fact, we see just how seeing a lot more of his flaws.
Mm-hmm.
Not only when I say that he's favorite child syndrome, but he's showing this conflicting, had to deal with some heavy choices here when having to confront how to really prevent more damage from the human side,
especially on this his adoptive new home world. And of course his relationship with his wife,
Neytiri, continue to be played by Zoe Saldana.
Love her in almost everything she does. I feel so Neytiri is probably one of the high points of her career as far as I'm concerned. She brings such life and such nuance to that story, into this character.
I feel that she brings a lot more of the heart that for the Na'vi side. There was a recent interview where she discussed how she describes Neytiri, that's going around as being highly controversial, because she describes Neytiri as a racist. That's ill-advised, because she's a victim.
Yes,
of colonization.
Exactly, and she does sympathize some of the things that how would somebody who's in those situations feel with their home being ravaged and attacked, and their people being constantly attacked as well. And
it's like blaming the victim.
Exactly, it is like blaming the victim in a lot of sense.
But the character, thankfully, how the character is written, it is highly justifiable rage.
But it's also a case in which, especially in this particular story, there is a full circle moment for her that I did enjoy having to see this realization of where that actual hate and anger comes from, and the better ways in which how one can actually navigate through them.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the newer elements that are portrayed in this film is partially due with the other at this point it's probably one of the main human characters now.
Mm-hmm. The character is Spider.
Who is the son of the recurring villain of Major Courage. The actor who plays him, Jake Champion, I would say the character, along with the character of Kiri, who is played continually by Sigourney Weaver, they are plot devices.
Yeah, you really don't, aside from, elements that are happening around them and to them,
Mm-hmm.
they have no real drive as far as their main elements of trying to deal with the concepts in the story.
There's not a lot of character development.
Mm-hmm.
On a sense of understanding who this character is, besides just being described as alien Tarzan at this point.
And that's really all that he ends up being, because he could have such, and I feel as though they do drop the ball in a lot of ways for this character, because I feel as though having a individual who is the son of the family's hated enemy and having to deal with his concept of being a colonizer, individual, a product of colonization in a world that he cherishes and he loves and has grown to actually truly want to be a part of, is interesting. And you don't get enough scenes and elements within the story that you can go into his head and actually really see things through his point of view, his eyes.
Yeah, it's more interesting how other characters react to this character.
Exactly.
And it also just doesn't help when this probably most likely has been his earliest role,
Mm-hmm.
Jake Champion, before he went on to do something else when he's older. And the way his acting is in the film, I would say it is the weakest,
Mm-hmm.
mainly because of how disconnected his character feels. I don't know if the writers know how to write a teenage character.
Yeah, that's obvious. Because again, we have Sigourney Weaver trying to play a role of a teenage child, which again still doesn't work in a lot of ways. It still feels creepy. It still feels wrong, especially with certain scenes in this, where it deals with both Kiri and
The writing
and Spider.
I feel as though the writing is doing the work for the characters than the actors themselves.
And that's never really good.
But about the highlight on other highlights of the character side, and actually what helped elevates this particular installment, are the antagonists.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about Major Courage, who was played again by Stephen Lang, who's been a charismatic and very grounded, but yet also lively performance. That it really helps tears of time the likable villain.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways.
Yeah.
He's a avatar construct now, still playing up with the memories of his human counterpart, who's living it up. But I feel though what's interesting is the shift in his character in this film, that there's a different angle. They're very much the anti-Jake. So
yeah, in a case in which he understands where he's come, he has never forgotten where he's come from. He's an individual who's truly still about his Marine background, but because of this new this new breath of life that he has received, you're starting to see the seeds being planted within him of trying to understand where he is now.
And I feel as though the new relationship that he has with the new character Varang, who is among the Ash people, or in the Avatar sense, Mengquang side, where a group of Anunnaki who they feel betrayed by Awa. Due to a cataclysm that they don't necessarily delve that much into,
which is kind of weird considering that would have been this would have been the time to actually delve, especially because they keep bringing it up multiple times. You never really get an understanding or a real scene that really expresses how badly Awa messed up for these people.
But I do like the very fact that I want us to think that he's going to like the way that they're going at it, that he's most likely going to shift allegiances, but not in the way people might expect.
Yeah.
I feel as though he might still be gung-ho on the colonization side.
But more on the sense where that he's only really going to do it for individuals that's living his life in the way that he sees fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Verona, who was played by Oona Chaplin, who was the granddaughter of Charlie Chaplin, who's anybody who knows that old-timey actor in old school Hollywood. Wow, this is, I would say, despite the lack of lore that is provided here, she delivers.
Yeah, I absolutely loved every time I got to see her on screen, and she does have moments where you just love to hate her, hate to love her type of deal. I feel as though she truly owns the scenes that she's a part of, and I love this new concepts of how she likes to interact with the other characters. I just want to see more of her.
It's very much an introduction to her and her people, and but also the main reason why people go into this is the production.
Again, it's beautiful. We all know this. It's spot on. It's probably the best, CGI that you got to see on, the silver screen.
Yes, I always watch it in 3D.
Exactly.
We watched it in 3D Dolby.
But also, if you're going to watch it in 3D Adobe or any form of 3D, please make sure that your theater actually has decent glasses, because one when we went to didn't really actually have them, and it does kind of mess with you a little bit. But be that as may, 3D is the best way to watch these films.
Looking at Fire and Ash for how it really is now, not necessarily, I feel as though this movie is being judged mainly because of it's marketed as a new installment.
And it really is.
It's not.
It's a part two.
It concludes the story of Way of Water. And when I was watching this movie, I didn't have too much of a negative experience from what I saw when we was watching Way of Water. Yeah. There are elements that are actually very promising going forward, but I would say that right now the Avatar, once it does come back, they should have a hiatus, so they can start developing a lot more of those very bigger concept ideas. Like, despite our still a very flawed movie, I had a good time watching this.
Same. I would definitely fall this under the good category. There is so much room for improvement, and so much room for them to mess it up if they don't actually, adhere to what they could be doing with this franchise. But for what it's worth, it did succeed in certain elements that I was hoping that this movie could do. I'm just looking forward to what more they're going to actually do for it going forward. Mm-hmm. This is a story that's supposed to be dealing with the indigenous tribes of the world, or beyond it.
And it's very you have the Navi, who are very heavily inspired by like South Sudan, or South Sudan in Africa, or Southern America.
So get a lot of those individuals who are within those regions to actually do soundtracks for this, or at least do samples of their music within and culture within them.
Because you're clearly like using their culture as inspiration.
So at least give them more credit.
So that was our review for Avatar: Fire and Ash.
How y'all enjoying the Avatar franchise that it is? Or what are you looking for it, and what brings you keep coming back? Is it really just the production, or are you a fan of the storyline that's coming out and the character developments? Let us know.
Please be sure to check us on our other social media outlets of X, Letterboxd, Threads, and Instagram for other content we don't necessarily post on this channel. And also, check us out. This year we had reached 1,000 subscribers.
So thank you guys. And thank you everybody who's been around here on this big journey with us, and we're looking forward to making even more content and more videos going forward in the future.
Yes. And so stay tuned for other nice media.
I'm Aaron.
I'm Adam.
And this has been Seeking Media Productions.
See you.